I'm Martha, a 68-year-old widow living in my beautiful Victorian home in Boston. After 40 years of filling these rooms with memories, I never imagined my sanctuary would become the target of betrayal. My daughter Amanda recently married Brian, a charming real estate agent who swept her off her feet. I was thrilled at first until his true colors emerged after the wedding. When Brian showed up at my doorstep with a notary and declared he'd sold my house, I knew my suspicions had been right all along. Before I tell you how I outsmarted my greedy son-in-law, take a second to let me know where you're watching from, and hit that subscribe button if you want to hear more stories about standing up to family betrayal. Teaching was my life's calling. For 35 years, I shaped young minds at Boston East Elementary, coming home each day to this Victorian house my parents left me. The 3-story Blue Beauty, with its wraparound porch and original stained glass windows, has been my haven through life's ups and downs. My late husband James and I raised our daughter Amanda here, celebrating birthdays in the garden and Christmas mornings by the ornate fireplace in the living room. Our neighborhood has transformed dramatically over the decades. What was once a working-class area has become one of Boston's most desirable addresses. Trendy cafes, boutique shops, and tech startups have replaced the family businesses that once lined our streets. Property values have skyrocketed with homes like mine, now worth well over $1 million. Not that I ever considered selling this house holds 40 years of memories that no amount of money could replace. James passed away 5 years ago from a sudden heart attack. We'd been married for 42 years, and his absence left a hole in my heart that nothing could fill. Financially, I was secure, but not wealthy. James had been prudent with our savings and investments. His life insurance and my teacher's pension provided enough for me to maintain our home and live comfortably, though certainly not extravagantly. Amanda and I had always been close. After James died, she would visit every Sunday for dinner, often staying to help me with household projects or simply to chat over tea. She'd call several times a week, and we'd meet downtown for lunch at least once a month. I treasured our relationship, especially as she was my only child. My life remained full after retirement. I volunteer 3 days a week at the community center, teaching literacy classes to adults. My book club meets every Thursday evening, and I've maintained close friendships with several former colleagues. My next-door neighbor Harold, a retired police detective, often checks in on me and helps with heavier maintenance around the house. Jessica, my best friend from my teaching days, lives just a few blocks away and stops by almost daily for morning coffee. I've always been active and independent. Though I developed mild arthritis in my hands a few years ago, it's manageable with medication and hasn't significantly impacted my daily life. I drive, shop, cook, and maintain my garden without assistance. I climb the stairs in my home multiple times daily without difficulty. My primary physician always remarks on my excellent health during my annual checkups, telling me I'm in better shape than many 50-year-olds he sees. My days have a comfortable routine. I wake early, enjoy coffee on the porch when weather permits, then either volunteer or work in my garden. Afternoons might include a walk through the neighborhood or meeting friends. Evenings are for reading or watching classic films that James and I loved. On weekends, I often host small dinners for friends or attend community events. It's a simple life, but a fulfilling one. Never did I imagine that this peaceful existence would become threatened by someone I welcomed into my family. But looking back, perhaps the signs were there all along, if only I had recognized them for what they were. Amanda met Brian at a fundraising gala for the Boston Children's Hospital 3 years ago. She was 35 and had focused primarily on her career as a marketing executive, with relationships taking a back seat. When she called me the morning after the gala, her voice bubbled with excitement as she described the incredibly charming man she'd met who worked in real estate development. Brian Thompson presented himself as the perfect package. Tall, well-dressed, with a winning smile and an impressive resume, he seemed to check every box. He owned a small but successful real estate agency specializing in luxury properties. He claimed to have connections throughout the city and spoke confidently about property values and market trends. His polished appearance and articulate conversation style made a strong first impression on both Amanda and me. When I first met Brian for dinner at Amanda's apartment, he was the epitome of charm. He brought me flowers, asked thoughtful questions about my teaching career, and shared stories about his close relationship with his own mother, who lived in Florida. He seemed genuinely interested in getting to know me and made constant references to how much Amanda spoke about me. I left that evening thinking Amanda had found someone special. Their relationship progressed with astonishing speed. Within 4 months, Brian had proposed with a diamond ring that seemed extravagant for someone running a small agency. Amanda was ecstatic, swept away by the whirlwind romance. They began planning a wedding immediately, with a date set just 6 months from the engagement. It was during the engagement period that I began noticing subtle things that gave me pause. Whenever Brian visited my home, his eyes would linger on architectural details, the antique fixtures, or the original woodwork. He'd make comments like, "They don't build homes like this anymore," or, "Do you know what a property like this would go for in today's market?" Initially, I took these as professional observations from someone in real estate, but they increased in frequency. Brian insisted on an elaborate wedding, despite Amanda's initial desire for something intimate. He wanted it at the most expensive venue in Boston, with no expense spared. When Amanda expressed concern about the cost, he assured her that his business was booming and they could afford it. The guest list included many people I'd never heard of, mostly Brian's business associates, who seemed more like networking contacts than friends. After the engagement, I noticed gradual changes in Amanda. My once independent daughter began deferring to Brian on decisions both large and small. When I expressed mild concern about the speed of their relationship, she dismissed me with, "Mom, when you know you know. Brian says we're soulmates." She began cancelling our regular lunches, explaining that Brian needed her help with house hunting or business matters. There were warning signs I now regret ignoring. Like the time I overheard Brian on the phone in my garden during a Sunday dinner, saying, "The property is practically in the bag. The old lady doesn't have a clue." When he noticed me, he quickly ended the call and claimed he was discussing a business deal. Or when he accidentally opened my property tax statement, commenting on how valuable the land had become. Brian had a talent for isolation. He gradually convinced Amanda that certain family friends were jealous of their relationship. My neighbor Harold, who had expressed reservations about Brian to me privately, was labeled nosy and interfering. Jessica, who'd known Amanda since childhood, was suddenly stuck in the past and trying to hold Amanda back. One by one, the people who might have questioned Brian's intentions were pushed to the periphery of Amanda's life. Despite my growing unease, I wanted to support my daughter's happiness. I told myself that perhaps I was being overprotective, that my concerns stemmed from the natural worry of a mother seeing her only child embark on marriage. I convinced myself that Brian's interest in my home was merely professional curiosity, not something more sinister. How terribly wrong I was. The transformation in Brian's behavior after the wedding was both immediate and alarming. The charming, attentive man who had courted my daughter vanished, replaced by someone calculating and cold. Within a week of returning from their honeymoon in the Bahamas, Brian's visits to my home increased dramatically. What had been occasional Sunday dinners became almost daily appearances, often when Amanda was still at work. "Just checking in on you, Martha," he would say with a smile that never quite reached his eyes. "Family takes care of family, right?" These visits always included pointed questions or suggestions. "Have you ever thought about downsizing, Martha? This big house must be such a burden for you to maintain." Or, "I was just passing a lovely assisted living community brand new with a spa and restaurant, very upscale. I picked up a brochure for you just in case." Each comment was delivered with a veneer of concern that barely masked his true intentions. When I would firmly state that I was happy in my home and had no plans to leave, his jaw would tighten momentarily before the smile returned. Of course, of course. I just worry about those stairs with your arthritis. Amanda mentioned you were having trouble with them. This was a complete fabrication. My arthritis affected my hands slightly, not my mobility, and Amanda knew this well. When I confronted her about these misrepresentations, she seemed confused. Brian said you told him you were struggling, Mom. He's just concerned about you. Brian began leaving pamphlets for retirement communities and assisted living facilities on my coffee table. Just some options to consider for the future, he'd say casually. Each one was increasingly farther from the city, from my friends, from everything familiar. On 3 occasions, I returned home to find Brian in my home office, claiming he was looking for Amanda or borrowing a book. Each time he was near my filing cabinet, where I kept important documents, property deeds, insurance papers, my will. After the 3rd incident, I began locking the office door and keeping the key with me. One evening, I came downstairs after changing clothes to find Brian hunched over my desk, examining what appeared to be my property deed. He quickly shuffled the papers away when he heard me. "Just admiring the craftsmanship of this antique desk," he said smoothly. "They don't make furniture like this anymore." The most disturbing incident occurred when I overheard Brian speaking to someone on the phone in my backyard. I had stepped out to water my plants, but froze when I heard his words clearly through the open kitchen window. "The house situation is progressing nicely," he was saying in a low voice. "The old lady won't know what hit her. I've got Amanda convinced her mother needs specialized care. 6 weeks tops, and we'll have the property ready to list. The developer is already salivating." When I accidentally dropped my watering can in shock, Brian whirled around and quickly ended his call. "Martha, I didn't see you there, just handling some business. You know how it is, the real estate market never sleeps." My anxiety grew with each passing day. Sleep became difficult, and I found myself jumping at unexpected sounds. I began to question my own perceptions. Was I overreacting? Was I becoming paranoid in my age? But deep down, I knew something was very wrong. I attempted to discuss my concerns with Amanda during a rare moment alone. "Honey, I'm worried about Brian's interest in my house. He keeps suggesting I should move to assisted living, but I'm perfectly capable of living independently." Amanda's response was dismissive and defensive. "Mom, Brian is a real estate agent. He notices houses, it's what he does. And he's concerned about your future care, as am I. Maybe you should be more grateful that he's thinking ahead for you." Her words stung, but they also confirmed my suspicions that Brian was influencing her perceptions of me. I knew I needed to be careful and prepared. I began documenting every unusual comment, every uninvited visit, every suggestion about senior living. I used my old teacher's notebook, recording dates, times, and exact quotes. I installed a small voice recorder in my living room, capturing conversations that proved Brian was systematically trying to convince Amanda I was declining cognitively. And I made a crucial decision that would later prove to be my salvation. I consulted Sarah Williams, an attorney specializing in elder law, without telling Amanda or Brian. Sarah advised me to secure all important documents in a safe deposit box at my bank and to be vigilant about signing anything presented to me. She also suggested I discuss my concerns with trusted friends who could serve as witnesses to my mental competence if needed. Little did I know how soon this preparation would be tested. The confrontation came on a sunny Tuesday morning in April. I was in my kitchen preparing tea when the doorbell rang. I opened the door to find Brian standing there in a crisp business suit, accompanied by a nervous-looking man carrying a briefcase. Behind them, Amanda stood with an expression I couldn't quite read. Part discomfort, part determination. "Good morning, Martha," Brian said with a smile that seemed more predatory than friendly. "I've brought someone I'd like you to meet. This is Alan Parker, a notary public. We have some important papers for you to sign today." I invited them in, my heart pounding, but my exterior calm. Years of managing classrooms full of rowdy children had taught me how to maintain composure, even when alarmed. As we settled in my living room, I noticed the notary, Mr. Parker, seemed increasingly uncomfortable shifting in his seat and avoiding eye contact. Brian placed a stack of documents on the coffee table with a flourish. "Great news, Martha. We've found the perfect solution for your living situation." "Have you now?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. "Absolutely. We've sold this house to a developer who specializes in luxury condominiums. They're offering a very generous price, enough to set you up comfortably in Peaceful Pines, that assisted living community I showed you brochures for. It's all arranged." The audacity of his statement momentarily left me speechless. Amanda stepped forward, her voice gentler but clearly rehearsed. "Mom, we've been worried about you. Your arthritis is getting worse, and this house has too many stairs. Brian found a beautiful apartment in Peaceful Pines. It has a garden view and daily activities. The doctor Brian consulted said someone with your condition shouldn't be living alone anymore." "What doctor? I haven't seen any doctor with Brian," I replied, my shock turning to anger. Brian waved dismissively. "Dr. Landers. He reviewed your case and agreed that assisted living is the appropriate next step. Now these papers just need your signature and we can handle everything. You won't have to worry about a thing." Mr. Parker, the notary, cleared his throat. "Mrs. Williams," Brian supplied quickly. "Martha Williams." "Actually, it's Martha Reynolds," I corrected firmly. The notary frowned slightly at this discrepancy but continued. "Mrs. Reynolds, these documents transfer ownership of your property. I need to verify that you're signing them willingly and understand their contents." I glanced at the papers Brian was pushing toward me. The top document was indeed a property deed transfer, and I caught sight of a sales price far below market value. Below that was what appeared to be an admission contract for Peaceful Pines Senior Living, located nearly 60 miles from Boston, far from my friend's community and support system. "Brian claims my health requires assisted living," I said directly to the notary. "Are you aware that I live independently, drive my own car, volunteer 3 days a week, teaching adult literacy classes, and maintain this home by myself? Are you aware that no doctor has evaluated me or recommended assisted living?" The notary's discomfort visibly increased. "Mrs. Reynolds, if you're not in agreement with these documents..." Brian interrupted, his voice harder now. "Martha is getting confused. This happens frequently, it's why we're concerned. We've discussed this move many times, haven't we, Amanda?" Amanda nodded, though her eyes wouldn't meet mine. "Mom, please don't make this difficult. It's for your own good. You're not as capable as you think you are." I felt a momentary stab of pain at my daughter's betrayal, but pushed it aside. This was no time for emotion, it was time for action. "Mr. Parker," I said calmly, "I have never discussed selling my home. I have never authorized anyone to sell it on my behalf. I have no physical or cognitive impairments that would prevent me from living independently, and I have never been evaluated by any Dr. Landers." Brian's facade was slipping, his charm replaced by visible frustration. "Martha, we're trying to help you. This house is too much for you. The decision has been made. These papers just need your signature." I looked directly at him, summoning all my strength. "I understand perfectly what's happening here, Brian, and I have a counter-proposal." "What's that?" he asked warily. "Let's all go to the police station together right now. They're very interested in what you've been up to." The silence that followed my statement was absolute. Brian's face drained of color, then flushed deep red. Amanda looked bewildered, glancing between her husband and me, as though trying to make sense of the sudden shift in the conversation. "What are you talking about?" Brian finally managed, his voice lacking its usual confidence. I maintained my calm demeanor, though my heart was racing. "I'm suggesting that before I sign anything, we visit the police station. Detective Harold Morrison." "Yes, my neighbor Harold has been quite interested in the documentation I've been collecting about your attempts to defraud me of my property." I turned to face the notary directly. "Mr. Parker, are you aware that participating in real estate fraud against an elderly person carries serious legal penalties in Massachusetts? I believe the term is financial elder abuse." The notary abruptly stood up, closing his briefcase. "I think there's been a misunderstanding. I was told this was a standard property transfer with the owner's full knowledge and consent." Brian attempted to salvage the situation. It is. Martha is clearly confused. This is exactly why she needs supervised care. I smiled and reached for my phone. Let me call Harold right now. He can clarify things for all of us. As I dialed, I continued speaking calmly. For the past 2 months, I've been recording our conversations, Brian. I have documented your statements about selling my house without my knowledge. I have recordings of you telling Amanda I'm cognitively impaired when no doctor has made such a diagnosis. I have evidence of you entering my home office without permission and examining my personal documents. Harold answered on the second ring, his voice coming clearly through the speaker. Martha, everything okay? Harold, would you mind coming over? Brian and Amanda are here with a notary trying to have me sign over my house to a developer. Don't sign anything. I'll be right there, Harold responded immediately. Brian stood up, his composure completely gone. This is ridiculous, Amanda. Tell your mother to stop this nonsense. But Amanda wasn't looking at him anymore. She was staring at me, a dawning horror in her eyes. Mom, is this true? Has Brian been planning to sell your house without your permission? Before I could answer, I pulled out the small voice recorder from my pocket and played a clip I had carefully saved Brian's voice in my backyard. The old lady won't know what hit her. I've got Amanda convinced her mother needs specialized care, 6 weeks tops, and will have the property ready to list. Amanda's face crumpled as the reality of her husband's deception hit her. Brian! What is this? You told me Mom agreed to move to assisted living because she was struggling. The notary, Mr. Parker, was already heading for the door. I want no part of this. Mrs. Reynolds, I strongly suggest you report this attempt at fraud. Brian's charm had completely evaporated, replaced by naked anger. You stupid old woman, do you have any idea what that property is worth to developers? You're sitting on a gold mine and too stubborn to cash in. Amanda and I could have handled everything you would have been taken care of. By being shipped 60 miles away from my home friends and community to a place where I would have no independence or control over my own life, I responded, all so you could profit from the sale of my property. The front door opened as Harold let himself in, still in his bathrobe, but with an unmistakable air of authority from his decades as a detective. What's going on here? He asked, though his expression suggested he knew exactly what was happening. Brian made a move toward the door, but Harold blocked his path. I think you should stay put until we sort this out, son. At that moment, Amanda did something that surprised me. She picked up the stack of documents from the coffee table, looked through them briefly, then tore them in half. These papers are fraudulent, she said quietly. My mother never agreed to any of this. The look Brian gave her was venomous. You idiot! Do you know how much money you just tore up that developer was offering? I don't care what they were offering, Amanda interrupted, her voice stronger. This is my mother's home, not yours to sell. Harold had already called the police department. Within 20 minutes, 2 officers arrived. I provided them with my documentation, the recordings and a copy of the consultation notes from Sarah Williams, the elder law attorney who had advised me. As one officer took Brian aside for questioning, I learned that this wasn't his first attempt at such a scheme. The other officer revealed that Brian was already under investigation for a similar situation involving his former mother-in-law, a detail he had conveniently omitted from his life story. His real estate success was largely built on manipulating property transfers from vulnerable owners. The most painful revelation came when Amanda broke down in tears, admitting that Brian had systematically convinced her that I was declining cognitively and physically. He kept saying we needed to intervene before you hurt yourself or made bad financial decisions, she sobbed. He had answers for everything, explanations for why you seemed fine when I saw you, reasons why we needed to act quickly. I trusted him completely. The notary. Mr. Parker provided his statement, confirming that he had been told this was a routine property transfer with the full knowledge and consent of the owner. He had become suspicious when he noticed the discrepancy in my name and my clear opposition to the documents. As the police prepared to take Brian to the station for formal questioning, he made one last desperate attempt. Martha, be reasonable. Think about Amanda. Do you really want to see her husband arrested? We can work something out. I looked at him steadily. You should have thought about Amanda before you tried to defraud her mother. This isn't about revenge, Brian. It's about justice and protection, not just for me, but for anyone else you might target in the future. As the officers escorted him out, the magnitude of what had nearly happened hit me. My home, my sanctuary for 40 years had come within inches of being stolen through manipulation and deceit by someone I had welcomed into my family. The betrayal cut deep, but in that moment, I felt something else too. A profound sense of empowerment. I had protected myself when it mattered most. The weeks following Brian's arrest were a blur of legal proceedings, emotional conversations, and painful revelations. The police investigation uncovered that Brian Thompson wasn't even his real name. He was Brian Thorpe, with a history of similar schemes targeting elderly homeowners, particularly widows. His small real estate agency was largely a front for property fraud operations. The luxury wedding designer clothes and expensive gifts had been financed through previous successful scams, not legitimate business, as he'd claimed. I filed a formal complaint of attempted elder abuse with the district attorney's office, providing all my documentation and recordings. The evidence was overwhelming, and the prosecutor assigned to the case informed me they were pursuing multiple charges, including attempted fraud, elder financial abuse, and identity misrepresentation. Most shocking was the discovery that Brian had 2 previous marriages that ended under suspicious circumstances, both to women whose mothers owned valuable property. His first mother-in-law had indeed lost her home through a similar scheme before anyone realized what had happened. The second had narrowly avoided it when her daughter became suspicious, which explained why Brian had worked so hard to isolate Amanda from anyone who might question his motives. Amanda was devastated. She moved back into her old apartment, unable to face staying in the condo she had shared with Brian. Our relationship entered a fragile phase. Her guilt and my lingering hurt created a chasm between us that would take time to bridge. "How could I have been so blind?" she asked repeatedly during one particularly difficult conversation. "All the signs were there. The way he questioned me about your finances, his sudden interest in your medical appointments, his insistence that we needed to help you downsize. He was a practiced manipulator, Amanda," I reminded her gently. "He knew exactly what he was doing." We began attending family therapy sessions with Dr. Elaine Foster, who specialized in helping families recover from betrayal and fraud. The initial sessions were painful, with Amanda breaking down frequently as she processed the depth of Brian's deception. "I feel like such a fool," she admitted during our 3rd session. "I believed everything he said about you, Mom. When you tried to tell me something was wrong, I dismissed you. I even started to think you were being paranoid and difficult." That was precisely his strategy, Dr. Foster explained. Financial abusers isolate their victims from support systems and create doubt about the victim's mental capacity. It's a common tactic, and it's devastatingly effective. As the legal case progressed, I was contacted by Brian's previous victims, including his first wife Lisa and her mother Patricia, who had lost her historic home in Charleston to Brian's scheme. They provided additional evidence for the prosecution and offered me something equally valuable: the understanding that came from shared experience. I blamed myself for years. Patricia told me over the phone, her voice carrying the weight of that guilt. "If I hadn't been so trusting, if I'd asked more questions. But you can't think that way. These predators are experts at what they do." With Sarah Williams' guidance, I took steps to protect myself from future exploitation. I established a revocable trust for my property and assets, with Jessica as my successor trustee. I created a durable power of attorney, naming my longtime friend and former colleague Michael as my agent, someone with no financial interest in my property. I updated my will and advance directives, ensuring my wishes would be clearly documented and legally binding. Sarah also helped me register with the county's property fraud alert system, which would notify me immediately if anyone attempted to file documents related to my property. "This is an extra layer of protection," she explained. "Even if someone forges your signature on a deed, you'll know about it right away and can take action." The community response to my situation was overwhelming. My neighbors organized a neighborhood watch program specifically focused on protecting elderly residents from similar schemes. The local senior center invited me to share my experience as a cautionary tale, and I found purpose in educating others about the warning signs I had noticed but initially dismissed. Throughout this period, Harold remained a steadfast ally, checking in daily and accompanying me to court proceedings when necessary. "You know, Martha," he told me one evening as we sat on my porch, "in all my years as a detective, I've rarely seen someone handle this type of situation with your level of grace and strength." As Brian's case moved toward trial, Amanda and I slowly rebuilt our relationship. The trust wasn't fully restored, that would take much longer, but we were communicating more openly than we had in years. The experience had stripped away pretenses and forced us to confront difficult truths about ourselves and our relationship. "I'm so sorry, Mom," she said one Sunday as we worked together in my garden. "I should have trusted you. I should have seen through him." "We both wanted to believe in him," I replied, squeezing her hand. "But we're moving forward now, wiser and stronger. That's what matters." 6 months after that fateful morning, when Brian arrived with the notary, I sat in a courtroom and watched as he was sentenced to 8 years in prison for multiple counts of fraud, attempted elder abuse, and identity theft. The judge's words rang clear in the hushed courtroom. "Your systematic targeting of vulnerable elderly individuals and betrayal of family trust represents a particularly reprehensible form of predation." The path to healing wasn't linear. There were days when the betrayal felt fresh, when I would walk through my home and remember Brian's calculating gaze assessing its value. But those moments gradually became less frequent, overshadowed by new memories, and a deeper appreciation for the genuine relationships in my life. My relationship with Amanda required the most careful rebuilding. The initial weeks were awkward and painful, both of us carrying different forms of hurt and betrayal. Amanda struggled with overwhelming guilt and shame, questioning her own judgment and worth. "How can you ever trust me again?" she asked one evening as we shared dinner. "I almost helped him take your home." "Because you were deceived by someone expert at deception," I replied. "And when confronted with the truth, you chose what was right. That matters, Amanda." We established new traditions. Thursday evening, cooking classes together. Sunday morning walks through the neighborhood, honest conversations about our fears and hopes. Slowly, the tension between us eased, replaced by a more mature understanding of each other's strengths and vulnerabilities. Through this experience, I discovered a new purpose. With the encouragement of Sarah Williams, I began speaking at senior centers about financial exploitation. What started as informal talks evolved into a structured presentation called Recognizing the Red Flags, which I delivered throughout the Boston area. "The most important thing to remember," I would tell my audiences, "is that predators count on your silence. They rely on your embarrassment and isolation. Breaking that silence is your strongest defense." I established a support group for elderly victims of financial exploitation, creating a safe space where people could share their experiences without judgment. Many participants arrived ashamed and defeated, but left with renewed confidence and practical strategies for protection. My home, which had nearly been stolen from me, became a gathering place for these new connections. The living room that once hosted Brian's manipulation attempts now welcomed monthly meetings of our advocacy group. The garden where he had made clandestine calls about the old lady blossomed with new plantings, contributed by friends and neighbors. Harold and Jessica remained constant presences in my life, joined now by a wider circle of friends, connected through my advocacy work. My days were busier and more purposeful than ever filled with speaking engagements, support group facilitation, and community education efforts. The experience changed my perspective on trust and vulnerability. I became more cautious about financial matters, but not fearful. I installed better security on my home, but continued to welcome visitors. I scrutinized documents carefully, but still engaged openly with my community. This balance between protection and connection became my new normal. Amanda eventually returned to dating, approaching new relationships with greater caution and awareness. We developed a system where she would introduce any serious prospect to Harold and Jessica, as well as to me, creating multiple perspectives on the person's character and intentions. I used to think being skeptical meant being negative, she reflected after ending a brief relationship that had raised several red flags. Now I understand it's simply being prudent. My house remained my sanctuary, but with a deeper significance now. Each room held not just memories of the past, but testament to resilience and self-determination. The home that Brian had coveted as a mere financial asset had proven itself to be something far more valuable, the foundation of community connection and purpose in my life. 1 year after the confrontation, I hosted a garden party to celebrate what I called my Independence Day. Friends, neighbors, fellow advocates, and family gathered in the backyard that had nearly been lost. As I looked around at the faces of people who had supported me through the darkest period, I felt a profound sense of gratitude and strength. Life continues to present challenges. Amanda and I still occasionally hit rough patches in our healing journey. The legal system's handling of elder abuse cases remains imperfect, but each day brings new opportunities to build awareness, strengthen protections, and create meaningful connections. My experience taught me that our greatest vulnerabilities often reveal our greatest strengths. The trust that made me a target also connected me to a community that ultimately protected me. The home that attracted a predator became the center of an advocacy movement. The betrayal that threatened to destroy family bonds eventually led to deeper, more honest relationships. This is the wisdom I now share whenever I speak to seniors about protecting themselves. Trust your instincts. Document concerning behavior. Connect with reliable allies. Know that your age does not diminish your rights or your voice. And remember that in standing up for yourself, you stand up for countless others who may face similar threats. Have you ever had to confront someone who betrayed your trust? How did you handle it? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if you found value in my experience, please like and subscribe to this channel for more stories about resilience and standing up for what's right. Remember to share this video with someone who might need to hear this message. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, it's never too late to reclaim your power and protect what matters most to you.